Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with
Ivan Ozerets.
He's got his name down. He's pronouncing it better and better all the time. I was reprimanded this week not to say the not so great tennis podcast. We're the great tennis podcast. 203, I'm going to call up Andres Barbosa, the fact checker, our podcast coach. Blame it all on him. He's in Colombia. I was invited one time to go to Colombia, but it didn't work out to go to Colombia.
Hello?
Calling Colombia, Andres Barbosa. Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, 203.
Oh, well, hello, how are you?
Ron, how are you? Steve, how are you?
Great. Yeah,
Seems like a routine here. Every time I'm down here, you guys want to do a podcast.
Yvonne is at the table. Yes. Yvonne at the table. Let's reprimand Yvonne first. Then you reprimand me second. Tell us the mistakes. The fact checker. Tell us the mistakes. Well, you can tell me first. Coach K. Coach K.
Yeah, the Coach K one. The Coach K one hurt me, but that's Shashesky. But I mean, it's you guys made every intention of sounding out every letter in his last name.
Yeah, I apologize for that one.
With Coach K. We're at Wintergreen Resort, Wintergreen, Virginia. It is the last day of June. Wimbledon's coming up. You're in Colombia, down visiting your parents, but you're mostly teaching in Miami, correct?
Correct. Yeah, been down there now for, we probably finished college in about 99 and probably been doing it a quarter century now. So time really flies. And
tell us a little bit about your summer. You and your brother, JD, the smarter, the better looking brother. What are you guys up to?
We've just, the same old, we basically, we've got a lot of kids, all different levels. And, we've got tournament kids that are taking it a little bit more seriously. So we have like a group that comes out from 8 a.m. to noon. And then we've got some other kids, maybe parents aren't able to get them there in the morning or what have you. So they come out play in the evening. They come out from like 5 to 9. And, for about 2 weeks, 10 days or so, I was grinding both sessions. I was pulling a Steve Smith. And, I was only about 6 hours short in a day, but yeah, this next week off will be well deserved in my eyes.
Tells Colombia. I think of Ruben Perek. People know me a long time. It was a fun project, Colombian. I was coaching him, and he spent a summer at the Vic Braden Tennis College. So every evening, Vic would come out and work with us.
My parents moved back here about 8 years ago. So post-COVID, my brother and I just, any free chance we get, we head on down for about 10 days or so. And it's kind of crazy. I ran into the funniest people. I ran into Roberto Fara the other day going to Medellin. And, listeners who don't know, he was Wimbledon champion, #1 doubles player in the world. And I remember before he went off to USC, his sister was working for us at the park. She was at UM, and she brought her brother for a couple weeks out there. So it's crazy how time flies. He must have been like 19, 20 years old when he first came to the States, and then now he's retired with a couple kids, and he's doing great.
And tell us one more time, that is who and how old is he?
Roberto Fara. He played with Juan Sebastián Cabal. I mean, I want to say they were #1 team in the world there for a couple of years. I want to say they won Wimbledon and the U.S. Open. So they retired about 2 years ago. So he's got to be about 37, 38 years old right now. So,
well, you'd have to
give a long career playing doubles.
You'd have to give us the American pronunciation. Yeah. So let's go with, how do you pronounce your name in Miami, and how do you pronounce your name in Colombia?
The funniest way I've heard my name being pronounced is where it sounds like undressed, like I'm gonna disrobe. But you can go with Andres, I'm even fine with Andre. You know, I'm even fine with giving me the Agassi treatment. But
give us give us all 4 names. You guys all have 4 names.
all right, so it's funny you say that because in Colombia they use your mom's maiden name. My mom's maiden name is Lopez. So basically, you know, I'm not used to it, so I say Barbosa all the time, and you can just see the look on their faces that they're stumped. They look on, you know, when you check in for a flight or what have you, they're just looking and they're going nuts. So, but it's Andres Felipe Lopez Barbosa.
Cool.
I was going to say Liliana Fernandez. She went to Texas A&M with Laura Hanna, Colombian gal. Or went to Europe with them. I think it was 1982. It was a long time ago. And Perek coached him about the same time. He actually ended up playing Davis Cup for Colombia. With Summer.
Colombia's got quite the history. People don't give it credit because, you know, a lot of the Spanish training that people talk about, a lot of that stuff was started by a Colombian, Pato Alvarez. So, you know, it's not, you know, we're not Australia and we're not the U.S., but I mean, it's a little stronger than people realize.
Jeff Coetzee, who trained with us when he was a kid, a South African. Amazing story. He won matches on the ATP tour. I think he got as high as 12 in the world. He was in a terrible car accident where his nephew was killed. He was told he would never play again, but he came back and won another ATP title. But he actually, for the longest time, he coached the Colombian team that was number 1 in the world, and they won majors.
That's Farah and Kamal.
Yeah. With our summer, we're up here, we're grinding. We got through the month of June. I've said before that we've had those summers where we had lunch 90 days in a row at Subway. We're going 90 days. At the end of it, we're going to Baylor University. If people were
Happy Lane, it was Panera.
What's that again? Oh, Panera.
When you guys were living in Happy Lane, it was a daily Panera visit.
Yeah.
Panera is great for internet.
Mm-hmm.
If you're ever in Panera and if you're looking for a tutor, you can go to Panera. There's people that are in Panera teaching kids how to play chess, and a lot of positives going to Panera. But yeah, Baylor University, we're going to go down and run a 2-day workshop and then stay for, I think, 4 more days and coach players who want to visit us, but that'll be fun. People get more information on our Facebook page on that. Yvonne can put it up a time or two with... I
saw that. It's in late August, right? The 25th to 26th?
Yeah. Right about the time the U.S. Open starting. With what we're on our 3rd day of practicing the national anthem with July 4th coming up. And the group is getting better. I have zero musical talent, but I just pick out somebody I think who's going to be no stage fright and a little bit of a tune. But our group, it was much better the 2nd day. We just had pick out the all-star and say, okay, you go the first 3 lines. That's something we're working on. With let's go before we start our topic tonight. Let's let you go first on the Fed's documentary, then Yvonne can go on his commencement speech. Any comments? Tell us about his documentary.
You know what? I was surprised that I liked it as much as I did. It's initially, I guess it's obviously scripted. They made it seem like it was just a private home movie or home video, but it was, obviously they had plans to release it. But it was, I didn't realize the severity of, I forgot which surgery it was, maybe number 2, but they showed a video of him like in crutches coming out. But it was pretty great to see like behind the scenes at the Labor Cup. It was, fun hearing the interactions with the players, like at the dinner, Andy Murray ripping on Djokovic for being vegan and basically, basically Rafa going nuts that Sonego's grunting at Wimbledon was not an accident. Berrettini's defending Sonego, saying he's been doing it since he's a little kid. It's just really funny. Like you don't get to see that very often in tennis. You see it in other sports, like locker room moments. So it was pretty good. And then I was surprised actually at how emotional Novak got when Federer thanked him for coming out. I mean, you can just see the guy like break down and just want to go be by himself. But I mean, it was really well done. And from what I heard, that they're probably going to do the same for Nadal. I don't know if Nadal's planning on retiring this year, but I know he's playing Laver Cup, so I thought I heard something that they were going to do something similar for Nadal.
I know he's playing the Olympics before the Laver Cup, but with the speculation is that he may retire like Federer did at the Laver Cup. What do you think of the new coaches at the Laver Cup? Or is that
I was a little bit surprised.
That's for next year, right?
Next year, not for this year.
So for the listeners, Agassi and Noah. Forget Yannick.
Correct,
to get Yannick Noah, that's going to be cool. That guy is. I mean,
it's. Cool. I guess it was like the nice thing to do to let Bjorn Borg off the hook, because the poor guy was just for 5 years would just clap and say nothing on the bench. I mean, he looked so obviously uncomfortable in that scenario, in that situation. But I mean, I'm going to be a little upset to miss out on McEnroe. I liked having McEnroe on the bench.
With Borg, he tried TV commentating, but he actually at one time he fell asleep in the booth. It didn't work out. The players love Borg though, but Borg was very, very quiet.
Well, they talk. I mean, you'll see that in the documentary, like the reverence that Federer has towards Borg, and it was just. I mean, see, like when you see him in the locker room, like Borg is like in his element, but basically being stuck there on the bench and having all the players jump over and coach themselves, it kind of left Bjorn in an awkward situation, I thought, over the years. But we'll see. I mean, Yannick Noah won't be boring, I'm sure.
I remember in 1985, I was fortunate enough to be in Germany, and with the Seguzo brothers, Robbie and Roger, I was with the Davis Cup team, and Arthur Ashe really said almost nothing. He's just so quiet. Respected, but just really, really quiet. It reminds me of Borg. Actually, one of our students years ago, Jeff Lush, who was in a car accident, I was in the room when, he's training to be a tennis teacher. I was in the room with his mom when he told him to never walk again. So this happened the week before Tyler, Texas. Dallas, it was the WCT finals. Agassi was a young guy. He was an alternate. And, he got to wear the blue jeans because McEnroe turned it down. Those blue jeans were designed for McEnroe. But, he signed many things that were sent out, but all the players, I guess I should lead into a Boris Becker story with this, but anyway, all the players came out, and when Yannick Noah came out, and he was told beforehand that this young man loved tennis and was going to make his career as a tennis teacher, and about our program training people for a 2-year degree. I mean, he couldn't stop. He was in the room. He just couldn't stop crying. No, he was so authentic. He was so emotionally moved by that experience. But anyway, Becker.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm sure you know the exact backstory, but was it Arthur Ashe that discovered Yannick Noah in Cameroon?
Exactly.
And then brought him to France, and then how was that exact? I mean, it's amazing the influence that Arthur Ashe has had in so many different ways.
No, for sure. But, he was doing a clinic in the Cameroon, and Noah just was a kid with so much talent. There's many stories like that with Navratilova doing a clinic that Sharapova was in and saying, hey, you've got to get her to where she can hit more balls and get more training. But no, the term is discovered Yannick Noah. But anyway, coming back to this young man who was paralyzed, his favorite player was Becker, and Becker was the only player in the 8. I guess I said Agassi was an all-star, so alternate, the top 8. So Becker, he wins. We talked the mother, and we got her to go to the finals. So distraught, and said, "Hey, let's just watch a little bit of the doubles." So we go back out to the hotel, and asked the nurse, "How's Jeff?" And she said, "Well, this big guy with red hair came, left him a racket." Boris Becker said he had to leave to go back to Germany, but so he had a short press conference, and he got in his limo, and he went out after the tournament and just met with Jeff one-on-one. Those are amazing stories. But yeah, Noah, he's a great entertainer. What a fun player to watch play. He got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and his son Joaquin was there, who was at Florida, where they won 2 nationals, NCAA championships, and then he was with the Chicago Bulls. I believe they won, but he was the league MVP. You're the fact checker. But so when he was inducted to the Hall of Fame,
he won what?
He won the MVP award when you're Yannick.
No, he might have won. He might have won Defensive Player of the Year, not the MVP.
Oh, okay. That's why we need the fact checker. Anyway, he's in the NBA, so. And Yannick Noah,
he had a great career.
Yannick Noah said, "I'm glad my son's here because he doesn't even think I was an athlete. He was just being funny." But no, Agassi's a great showman, and he's that really should add to the Laver Cup. I would love to see senior doubles added to the Laver Cup. So down the road you would have the Fed and Nadal could play the 2 Bryan brothers.
That'd be cool.
Could happen this year.
This year, you think?
Andy Roddick was speculating it on his podcast. Hate to bring up your competition, but
podcast.
He was mentioning that it could happen. It's nothing out of nothing in the rules saying that Federer can't be added to the team and play doubles. So I guess it depends to see if actually Nadal's retiring or not.
So the Fed was this documentary a little bit like The Last Dance, Michael Jordan Last Dance.
I mean, The Last Dance was a lot longer. I mean, it was like 10 parts, but it was very good. I mean, for tennis, it's very good. I just don't think you see enough of those like cool moments. Let's say like where a kid can be home and watching and see like those little locker room dialogues or the players arriving. A lot of little things that I don't think people get to see. So where I think in the NFL, NBA, you see everything, right? You see what the players are wearing when they go to before the game. You see, all the ridiculous trash talking beforehand. So I thought it was really well done. I really liked it was amazing. It was actually, I've spoken to a few of the kids. I mean, a lot of the girls that watched it were crying because Federer's daughters were crying. His wife was crying. A lot of tears in that documentary.
I've had a couple of coaches tell me that they said get the Kleenex out because they cried. Actually, as my late mother would have said, we blew it because the timing, it came out right before Wimbledon starts. Wimbledon starts tomorrow. So we'll have to, we're having these crazy long days, so we'll have to watch it after Wimbledon. But let's go to the documentary, or from the documentary to the graduation. Yvonne saw the commencement speech.
I did listen and watch the commencement speech. Just off the top of my head, I loved how at the end he brought out a racket and said, "Hold an Eastern grip." He went through the swing. A lot of great lessons in that commencement speech. A lot of great quotes. It seemed very, and understandably, very scripted. It must have had to have been vetted and such. But he played it off well. He's actually a very good speaker. He's great. So many years speaking in front of a mic and in front of a.
He's had a little practice.
He has a little practice, a little bit, and he's good. Yeah, it's a great speech. I would recommend anybody to listen to it. Give some lessons. He calls them tennis lessons for life, and yeah, it's great. It's great that he's now talking about more his experiences and how his life has been shaped through tennis. When he was on tour, you'd have to listen to like him in this press room a lot, but he wasn't really connecting it because he was in the game. Now that he's out of the game, it feels like he's a lot more open to sharing that kind of stuff. So it was a great speech. I thought it was good.
Commencement speeches. I'm the youngest of 6, so I went through a few high school graduations, the older siblings. And I always thought commencement, not like commence fire, cease fire, begin fire, because high school is like a jail sentence. 1 more year and I'm out. 2 more years and I'm done. But I always thought the commencement, that must mean it's the end. High school, it's over. The commencement speech. But it reminds me of Jerry Seinfeld. There's so much. I mean, just so much content. But I understand he spoke at Duke. You'd always listen to Jerry Seinfeld. There might be a laugh or two for sure. I like the fact that the Fed, I mean, he just covered his whole life story. It was just how plus, he did tie in the Dartmouth, all the things in Hanover. I tease people and tell them I have a Dartmouth education. I went to a prep school 10 minutes from Dartmouth, and many of the professors went to Dartmouth. The one thing about Dartmouth, they have a Greek week that all the fraternity sororities, they make these amazing ice sculptures because they're definitely up north in New Hampshire. But 54% of the points he won his entire career.
Yep.
That's amazing. Against all his opponents. For 10 years in a row, he was locked at 55% with Nadal going into the US Open. So they played, it starts almost 9 full months of tennis, 55.1, 55.2.
I think the best quote I took from that commencement speech, thinking back on it, was when he mentioned the point you're in. I'm paraphrasing, don't have it word for word, but it stuck with me. It said, the point you're in has to be the most important thing in the world to you in that moment. But then it passes and you have to let it go. And he says, with that mindset, I was able to achieve great heights, something like that. So he attributed that kind of mindset to his success. I thought that was great.
Well, just the other day, we have these long immersion days, and I'm talking really like 4 and 4 hours, sometimes 8 hours. But it's amazing the energy, as long as you can, you have the variety and mix it up. So we come in the classroom and we say, okay, let's go around the room and go with Roger Federer quotes. The one is, I didn't know you were supposed to win in practice. It's frightening how low the level play is at Wimbledon. I know that less than 2% of the time my opponents are coming in behind their serve. Good things happen when you go to the net. So, but you can also, you can just Google Roger Federer quotes. Our topic tonight, podcast 203, with, I guess I can say this before, some shout outs before we get rolling with our topic. Steve Roberts out in Northern California. Steve and Aoife Drexler and all the people on staff. They have a young student here. He's 9 years old and he hits the ball really well. And, he's just here to, do the slow work and do the character work. And with Dave Secker, who's been a guest on our podcast, he is one of his players here. But it's great to have all these connections with different coaches. But that's a shout out. Let's go with our topic. Our topic is going to the net. Why don't you begin, Andres? Why do people go to the net? Why do people not go to the net? Positives, negatives?
Well, I mean, if I'm going to talk about it from my own personal experience, I feel like I grew up in the era where baseline play was starting to really take a little bit of the pressure. Maybe not the pressure. I want to say baseline play, oversized rackets started becoming a nuisance for the serve and volleyers. So, I mean, my earliest memories of tennis are like in the late 80s. So you had, let's say, John McEnroe, young Edberg and Becker. But then you had Agassi, Chang, Courier, who were all basically playing the returns a little bit differently than the way Lendl did. So that was, at least in that era, you started seeing a contrast. Maybe why I fell in love with the sport, because I identified with one group, and my friends maybe identified with Sampras or what have you. So, but now, just you can't get guys. There's very rarely ever a contrast. So I really have a tough time even saying that it's fun to watch. I mean, obviously you get some great matches. You get an Alcaraz, you get Sinner. They've played some great matches over the years, but for the most part, it just seems like monotonous baseline play, and it's just see who's going to be the first one to wilt.
Actually, Jimmy Arias, Buffalo. Shout out to Buffalo, upstate New York. He said the other day on tennis channel, he only played Wimbledon 3 times. He said, I lost twice in the first round. You get to the 4th round because grass was not my thing. He goes, I needed to be on the clay. But yeah, it was a different type of grass too, as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to me, different generations. I'm not saying that what I like is right, but it's just very different. I know we've talked about pickleball here a ton on this podcast over the years, and I am not against playing it. I enjoy playing it. I've had a good time doing it, but I do draw a line at watching it on TV. It is, to me, unwatchable. But by the same token, I hear other people that love watching it. Makes me wonder if maybe I'm the one that's in the wrong, because when you watch some of these matches on the Pro Tour, and then you see guys, I mean, it's amazing how often now I hear your voice ringing in my head about Vic saying, "Oh, you should just mail in the score," because you get a guy that's playing against someone else, and they're playing the same strategy, but one guy's not going to play it as well as the other one. You can just mail in a 3 and 4. And I don't know if the average fan just thinks 3 and 4 is a close match because it sounds close in score. But I mean, I know many of us have played matches where you lose 3 and 4 and you never had a chance. So I don't really know how that message doesn't really hit home to certain players, that you need to do something more if the goal is to try to win the match.
With movement years ago, you never made fun of your president in the United States of America. And not picking sides, but it's official. I'm too old to do demos anymore, but so I move a little bit slow. But I said the other day, I said, well, there's some pickleball players mad at me, but poor Joe Biden is moving so slow, he can't even play pickleball. His wife had to help him down the steps, and with but no, it's
apparently
great.
It's still a 6 handicap.
Yeah. Biggest lie ever. Trump. With coming back to Grasso, Lendl. He didn't change his forehand in the rally, but he changed his forehand on the return. So he was skipping Wimbledon when he was younger. He was one of the best players in the world. He's on his way up, and I'm sure he was, if not in the top 10, right on the outside of the top 10. And he was being interviewed on grass. He was hitting golf balls. He said, "I'm not playing Wimbledon because I'm allergic to grass." But coming back to Lendl, he had won everything, and his coach at that time, Tony Roach, said, "You're too greedy. You're too egotistical. You've won everything. Don't skip the French," which he did. He skipped the French to just practice on grass. He said, "What you need to do is serve and volley the whole year, just whatever surface you're on." It blows me away how people don't train to play to win Wimbledon. They really don't. Although they did change the grass. It was now Bandy and then Hewitt that got to the finals. Was it 2001, 2002?
2002.
That we have to have a fact checker for the fact checker. That during that final,
2001 was the Ivanisevic Rafter match.
I'm just teasing you. During the final, no one served and volleyed one time. I did, use the word contrast. It was such a drastic difference to go from Paris to London, but not so much anymore. it's just, you can go back and watch the women play doubles. We always talk about going to watch an 87 match, mixed doubles, Kathy Rinaldi, Vince Van Patten. You can just go to YouTube, Jimmy Connors, Chrissy Everett, and it's just amazing. The gals are serving coming in. It's just you would never convince me that you can't serve and volley in doubles. But I think it's just really that kids don't learn. They go with what they got. It's brain memory. And if you don't go from the beginning, Joel Trucker said on one of these podcasts, if you're going to start to go to the net at age 15, it's like learning a third language. But
I think also in doubles, the problem that you have is with a lot of the formations, people playing high, it kind of makes the windows to pass a little harder. So basically, I'm assuming a lot of these guys are just assuming they can just make a good serve and that the net man will clean it up. No, it's very rare that you see, let's say, elite doubles play like Horacio Zeballos or Rajiv Ram, where these guys are like lobbing the return. It's like almost they're waiting for 30 all, 4 all, where this guy's blanketing the top of the net and they're going to lob the return. But
I heard Bob Bryan, say that the current generation, it's power doubles. And that's one thing is the modified eye. And you said it right. They go body, they go tee, and then the person up at the net, they don't give an angle going wide generally. And the person up at the net, just clean up. And then, Louis Caillé with, Jamie Murray is, basically putting your nose right over the net. That's where, to me, I think that they were bring back, like they do in baseball, at the pro level, they use a wooden bat. And was it fiberglass at, the high school and college level? But if they were to change the rackets, bring some tennis back into tennis, because the doubles, a lot of times it's not, there's not that many returns even made. But
yeah, and the guys that are up there, I want to say that most of them are in their 40s now. The top doubles players. I forgot to mention Jamie Murray. I love watching him play doubles. It's a little. So I've always said that it's a shame that tennis did not do a good enough job promoting doubles, for the simple fact that, number one, you could have your stars longer, right? I remember at the very when I was in high school or maybe college, McEnroe was retiring, and at the end of McEnroe was maybe getting to a couple of semis of slams. But I remember the hype of when he won Wimbledon with Stich, or when he was going to play doubles with Graf, or mixed doubles with Graf, when he was going to, there was I remember Navratilova at the end of her, she obviously should have retired from singles. I'm sure she's winning, doubles slams, mixed doubles slams in her late 40s and even 50. I think she won a mixed doubles slam when she was 50. So if you can have your star players around for so long, why is that how can that be a bad thing? How can it be a bad thing to have Roger Federer still playing doubles? The fact that people with limited history or knowledge of the history of tennis, and they just decided to deem that doubles is worthless, it seems pretty short-sighted. So, I'm sure, and Labor Cup does a great job of it. Those doubles matchups are great during Labor Cup. It's fun to see all the different combinations, people playing with each other. Even though you may not like the style of play they're doing, it's something different, and it really should be embraced. And we failed, I think, in tennis because pickleball goes out there and plays doubles, and everybody loves it.
With McEnroe playing with Stich, I remember McEnroe did not want to offset. In other words, when he was returning, he didn't want to have Stich come back and be on the baseline, because if you can't get the return cross court, you still have a greater possibility of making a play. But he finally called Stich back, and they ended up breaking serve. Here's a Michael Stich story for you. Back when Germany was not unified. West Germany, I believe it was 11 states. I was up in Hamburg teaching tennis, and it was with Christoph Mueller, and he was in the finals of the 16s, the state championships. And Michael Stich was on the first court in the 18s. And I go, this guy is good. Who is this guy? And he went off to university. And that same summer, 85, Becker wins Wimbledon. So the story goes is Stich goes home. He goes to university for a semester. And he comes home and he convinces his parents, hey, if Boris Becker can win Wimbledon, I can make it on the tour. So parents say, okay. And he starts to play pro tennis, climbs the ladder. Then 5 years later, he plays Becker in the Wimbledon final, beats him. That's a great story. If you say, if you think you can, you can. You know, you got to believe. And it's amazing how stories like that happen. With coming to that, throwing out Vic Braden.
That might have been the match that ruined tennis for you, because I think after that match is when they wanted to start slowing the conditions down and make it harder for players to sort of end points. I remember that they had a study where I think it was like a 4-set match, and I think they said the ball was in play all of 9 minutes. And there was such an outrage back then that they, I don't know if that was the beginning of trying to slow the conditions down.
Well, prior to coming over here, just having dinner, and what was on the Tennis Channel was Alcaraz, Novak, the final last year, Djokovic. Just so spectacular tennis. But again, coming back to doubles, and I think if people did go to the net in doubles throughout their junior career and college career, that they would have that added dimension where they could at least come to the net once in a while, and not like once a month. But with Uncle Vic, the late Vic Braden, you have to trust your volley and trust your overhead. The other thing is to value volleying position, to know the geometry of the court, 130 degrees potential angle. Also stats, Bill Jacobson, aggressive air margin, 2 out of 3. If you win 2 out of 3, you win 4 out of 6. Keep going, you win 8 out of 12, 16 out of 24. If you could do that consecutively, you win 6-0, 6-0. But all the way to the top, people don't understand the stat. Roger Federer, go to the net, good things can happen. If you get singles or doubles, if you could just go up and make one volley, quoting Roger Federer, people are afraid of the low volley. Look at Ben Shelton right now. He's 2-7 on grass this summer. Amazing serve, but serve and no volley. I mean, great player, but we've talked about creative training for him. If he was to serve underhand and play on half a court, I mentioned that on a podcast with this kid from that we trained, who's playing out at BYU, baseball pitcher, lefty, big kid, 6'5". And he didn't like my training. You will serve underhand, and you're going to play this kid who comes up to your rib cage, and he's just going to rip the return right at you. And we're going to play on half a court. Can you serve and can you volley? So people need creative training, situational training but I really don't think that stats, I think people hear the term analytics, but, I think that the kid's gone down the road too long. Is serve +1, crank your serve. And then, you just think of kids at the 12 and under level, tossing the ball over their head. They have knee flexion, but no knee rotation. It'd be like throwing a football, on the opposite side of your head. And, the ball does go up in the air, and, it bounces over a 12 and under kid's shoulder because of the trajectory. And then the kid's loading up with an Hawaiian grip, aiming for the fence. I like to tell people, we were doing some match analysis today, and this gal, she's almost 6'2", and she plays at NC State. And say, okay, let's look at, you won this point, or your opponent won this point. How would Swiatek do? Would she be able to track that ball down, or Coco Gauff? Because they leave so much court open, it's almost like a 2-lane highway. And like when the point's over, another Bradenism, ideally, you could take one step, reach out, and touch the net. We watched Spencer Johnson play a match against Colton Smith. Now, Colton Smith came and spent one day with me, made a video for him. I know he's a character kid athlete. He was in the the semis of the NCAAs. And Spencer Johnson, he needs to get a Stefan Edberg volley. Coming back to Federer, he was asked when Edberg was coaching him, are you going to come to the net like Stefan? And he said, I would if I could volley like him. With Ash,
but he started his career coming in all the time, and it's like it is fascinating how he just abandoned it. I mean, I had heard that he had done so because he figured he could serve so well that he was going to get a short forehand that he could mop up, and I guess in theory it made sense. But when you're playing Novak and you're playing Murray, they're gonna get every return deep middle. I mean, it seems like it was only until the very end of Federer's career that he brought back the serving volley. It seemed like he abandoned it for years, especially.
No, for
matches
sure.
with Nadal.
But you're referring to the Fed, not Edberg, about coming in?
Yeah, correct, Federer. But I mean, I want to say he started doing it again once Edberg got on the coaching team. It just seems like for years, when he was the number one junior in the world and early on in his career, he used to serve volley quite a lot. And then it was just almost like he quit cold turkey.
As pretty as Edberg's backhand volley was, his forehand was very ugly. And I think, like a John McEnroe, Lendl had a continental grip on the backhand and he pushed his knuckles down and lifted up. McEnroe, Vic Braden, his backhand was like a wave coming off the ocean, just a total roll. So he didn't want to stay back too long. People talk about his New York, the temperament. But if people went back and watched Edberg Chang, when Chang won the French, it was just like, talk about contrast. He was just in. But I think just to have a little bit of it, to have another dimension, you do hear that expression, the kid's a one-dimensional player. Many, many years ago, we would say, that kid, the way he's playing, it won't work in the 18s. And we go, now it will.
I want to say it's a universal problem, though, in sports. It's not just tennis, right? Like if you watch, NBA basketball, it seems like the only shot that matters now is the 3-point shot, right? And you'll get a lot of the players from yesteryear, they're talking about driving the ball to the basket or, a layup might only be worth 2 points, but you're going to make it way more frequently than the 3-pointer. And then if you look at NFL football, where it's pass, makes it seem like there's no room anymore for running the football or playing defense. So it just seems that something is just spoken ad nauseum, and people just repeat it. And they're going to think that you can only play tennis from the baseline, and that players from yesteryear could never compete with players from today. So,
yeah,
and again, in other sports, you've got guys like Stephen Smith, whatever his name is, Stephen A. These guys
Smith.
where they never really played any of these sports at a high level, yet they're influencing opinions greatly. That's why it's great when you hear like a JJ Redick come out there and just call him out on all the things. You don't have that enough. You don't have tennis players calling out others for saying things. No one calls out Patrick Mouratoglou for the things that he says. No one. They just sit there and take it, and then a young kid just hears it, and they're just going to accept it as truth, basically. So I think it goes back to the Federer thing. Where I just loved the open. It just seems so raw, being the locker room footage. It just seems so real and not scripted and not made up like most things you see in the tennis world nowadays.
I do walk to work, and when I come in the morning, it's too early to call people up. So I listen to some podcasts. Federer was interviewing Patrick Mouratoglou, and this thing about having kind eyes. I have kind eyes. Oh, okay. I'm going to find the goodness. I'm going to find the greatness in people. I'm going to tell them, no, I believe in you. This is what I see in you. With the world I come from, that just doesn't happen. It's like, come on, if it's crummy, it's crummy. Let's do some straight shooting. With Andy Roddick, he's picked up by Live Mike. He's playing doubles playing singles, playing 5 sets at U.S. hardcourt, and it's a Davis Cup match. He serves and volleys once, and he tells Patrick McEnroe it was a bad idea. He's got one of the best serves in the world. I mean, Isner, stays back, and that great serve he has. When he played doubles, he played 1 up, 1 back. Sam Querrey. I have that down at the top of the list as the examples. Yeah, okay, you could talk to a junior till you're blue in the face, but they turn the TV on, they watch the pros, they see what the pros are doing. The pros are very, very powerful. Let's come back to why do you think that the Fed stopped coming in? That match against Sampras, kill or be killed, where he won in 5 sets. He came to that more in that one match than he did in 5 consecutive Wimbledons. That's 10 weeks of matches at Wimbledon. And the guy won 8 titles.
But it's not just Federer that did that. You remember, like, way back in like the early '90s. I remember Boris Becker was determined to beat guys from the baseline. Like, he wanted to show that he was a more well-rounded player, that he could hang with all these guys from the baseline. And I remember CBS sending Mary Carrillo down to interview Jan Tiriac, and he'd be going nuts. He's like, I don't understand why the guy's playing the match this way. He's playing right into Agassi's hands, playing from the baseline. He's playing right into this. So it's not unique. I don't know if it's, maybe Federer's reasons are different than Boris's, but we've seen it before in the past where players do that. I don't know if it's out of body conservation or wanting to spice things up and not make it so monotonous. I mean, there's got to be more to it than just thinking that playing from the baseline is the best way to go.
Here's the story. Becker, Tiriac told him he was going to play the cat, Slovakian. Didn't have a very good serve. What was his name?
Miloslav Machir.
Machir. So Tiriac, I remember hearing that Tiriac was going to be a commentator on TV. I thought that was going to be awesome. The way he would say things. I think the women should make equal prize money, but they play best of 5 sets and they play with us. Tiriac. But Tiriac told Becker, okay, the only time the ball should bounce is when the ball boy gives it to you to serve, or then when you're returning. It's the only time the ball should bounce. And so he was going out to play Machir, and he's so stubborn, and that's the quality of a champion. He said, I'll show you. I believe it was the semis of the U.S. Open. Maybe it was the quarters. It was deep in the tournament. He's playing Machir, and he goes, don't tell me I can't beat this guy staying back. And I remember Dave Fish telling me about Brian Barker, who was basically the lifetime coach of James Blake. He said he never would tell him that he couldn't do something. And, I think that's a very interesting point. Very interesting point. McEnroe was a baseliner. McEnroe, I saw him play the Orange Bowl as a kid, and it was just accepted. Okay, you're going to play Wimbledon with the big boys. You're going to go to the net. So McEnroe was not a serve volleyer as a junior, playing all those amazing matches with Larry Gottfried. But all of a sudden, he just went to the net. That F it, Gene. I don't need to tell you what F it stands for, but just F it. I'm just going. I'm just doing it. And then you just do it. But what about the equipment? The rackets haven't changed that much in the last 20 years. Is that right? But the strings, what do you think? The strings are a huge factor why people don't go to the net?
You had Raven on one of maybe the second podcast. He mentioned the strings, but he mentioned in a way that I'd never really thought of, in the sense that saying that a lot of these guys nowadays, if they use gut, they would really struggle to keep the ball in play. and it never really occurred to me. Obviously I knew the advantages of co-polys as far as control. I mean, when Agassi started using Luxilon in 2002, he came out and said this is like basically cheating because he felt like he couldn't miss a ball. But I don't know. I think it starts way before that, right? Like, I mean, I'll go back to like other sports. You've got 7-footers in basketball that just want to shoot 3-pointers. Like there was once upon a time you would never see a guy farther out than 10 feet. So now they're out there chucking threes. So,
well, I do one thing with the chucking threes is I've had people tell me, well, tennis is just like basketball. Now you can hit winners from the baseline. I go, wait a minute. If they hit a 3, they get 3 points. If they hit a home run, they launch a missile from the baseline, they only win 1 point. So it's very high risk. But yeah, with to me, the racket, the strings, if you don't go to the net, you don't go to the net. You need 2 things to have to be a serve and volley, or is a serve and a volley. But if you don't go to the net, you don't go to the net. No guts, no glory. I mean, I grew up playing hockey. It's not a hockey puck. It's not a lacrosse ball. What are you afraid of? And I mean, have some fun. And Joel Trucker corrected me. It's really, I said, well, take a risk. You're up a green light point. You're up by 2 or 3. And he said, Steve, don't call it a risk. Call it an investment. And young players would be investing in their game. The 12-year-old should be able to be savvy enough. Okay, I'm up 40 love. I'm going to hit a body serve, and I'm going to venture to the net. And another thing too is that sadly, people don't care about doubles at every level. So sad. But if you don't care about it, why don't you just say, okay, this is practice to go to the net? But they don't. They want to win that 2-inch trophy. I told this little girl, 10 years old, who's been 3 years with her now. She comes back and forth, and parents have really invested a lot of time and therefore money. We've had coaches travel to work with her, and we made a review tape like we always do. And I said, just don't serve and stay back 1 point in junior tennis. Robin Anderson with UCLA, she spent 4 months with us once and 4 months with us another time. She was number 1 in the country, and she spent 4 months working with changing her backhand. And we're telling Stella Sampras, I only have one request, is when she plays doubles. She's only 5'3", but it doesn't matter. It does not matter at all. I said, if she could serve and volley, she played 4 years of college tennis, serve and volley all 4 years. Just go. And also, too, the college coaches, it's only 6 games. It's a flip of a coin anyway. I was just they're playing doubles the wrong way. I know podcast 199, nice guy, Ivan. He's, what is going on? And it does look like really, these excellent athletes playing 3-5 ladies doubles. And then the men, it's the same on the men's side now. It's just like, whoa.
The only thing that made me forget about Ivan's rant was getting Mark Hamlin back on. I am a big Mark Hamlin fan. Never met the guy, but I want a weekly podcast. But I do think that, sports are cyclical. And I do think that at some point, players are going to start coming forward because they're going to not want to be drop shotted constantly. So it used to be back in the day where baseliners would serve and volley against great net rushers just to prevent them from getting to the net. So I'm wondering if at some point we're just going to get, players attacking the net sooner. I mean, how often is Alcaraz going to go play 50 pots and hit 20 drop shots that basically win him the point with 50 pots 10 feet behind the baseline? I mean, it has not worked. I mean, I don't know how many matches he needs to lose before he adjusts that strategy, but it's the same pattern over and over and over again.
Yeah. No, I just think about, the Kramers, the 2 Ponchos, Gonzalez and Seguro, Bobby Riggs. What would they watching somebody they're back at the fence returning serve? But if you won, you know they're not coming to the net. But the drop shot, it's amazing. More drop shots than approach shots. But with that being stated, who do you think is going to win Wimbledon this year? Men, women, singles.
Well, I saw the Andy Roddick the draw show yesterday. I got a good laugh out of that. But looks like Alcaraz is playing Sinner in the semis, so that seems like the tougher half. But I mean, I will go out on a limb and go with the number one player in the world, with Yannick Sinner.
What do you think, Yvonne?
I think it's going to be a repeat final, and I think Alcaraz
beating Djokovic.
Yeah, I think he's gonna. I think he'll take it again.
You think Djokovic will be on one leg? You think he's good to go?
No, I think he's good to go. He seems to always be ready for majors.
With Federer serves so well, but the French Open, his forehand broke down. Forehand return at crunch time in the fifth. He has an extra segment on the forehand ground stroke. I mean, he's so good. He's so humble. He's just so great for the sport. But it's almost like he's hiding that backhand volley. So yeah, he's not a pure volleyer, but who is? I think Alcaraz he doesn't have the same serve as Sinner. But overall, if you just had to go through the checkpoints, Alcaraz is better from the service line in. So if he were to just know the geometry of the court, know the stats, just like I said, do you trust your volley? Do you trust your overhead braiding? Do you value volume position, the geometry, 130 degrees? Do you know stats? And I would pick Alcaraz. Then on the women's side, how about you? What do you guys have to say?
Oh, you gotta root for Ons Jabeur. I mean, it's such a she's been in the final twice. I mean, she's got to take it. But I'm a root for her. I mean, I want her to see her win it finally. She's a good player.
What do you think, Andres?
So, who do I think is going to win, or who do I want to win?
Both.
I would love to see Danielle Collins win, and then just basically hoot and holler on stadium court and go nuts. That's what I want to see. Roddick has Pegula in the finals, and he wanted a redraw immediately once he saw he had Pegula in the finals. But yeah, I mean, look, I think Naomi Osaka is actually looking better and better. I mean, I don't know who she's slated to play against, but I mean, she really should have taken out Swiatek in the second round of the French. And then I wouldn't have to be hearing everybody comparing Swiatek to Steffi Graf.
Well, on social media. Djokovic is still in the mix, but with Federer and Nadal not playing, it still comes down to there's just two or three men that names come up to win, although certainly somebody could step up and win. But I think for years it's always been more women. I mean, I just look at who's won majors, more new names, or the success is spread around a little bit more on the women's side. What about Rybakina?
I was just going to bring her up. Yeah. I mean, she can just stonewall her way through to the final and just win it again like nothing happened. And
I mean, you just don't know. I mean, Rybakina is like ill this week, the week before Wimbledon. Sabalenka's got like a shoulder issue. Swiatek has got Kenin first round. Well, you got a lot of you got a lot of competitors that are looming basically. Like now with 32 seeds, people used to think that you're protected to the third round, but I mean, I saw a lot of second round matches that are, they've got Berrettini against Sinner. So there's just a lot of matches that are now going to be interesting even in round two. Like first round, you've got Nico Jari, Shapovalov. Of course, I'm dying to see Nico Jari get to the final just because I want to see Jaime Field Sr. on center court watching his grandson. But yeah, I mean, there's just matches left and right. It's going to be very interesting first week.
So Roddick has Pegula being in the finals?
It was just so funny. He was so upset when he realized what he had done. But yeah, he's got her in the finals.
One thing that we have to do after the summer, we're doing these immersion weeks, and we're trying to share some information that will help tennis teaching. Is Pagula, people are going to tell us, hey, go sit in section F and have a hot dog. But I mean, not to get into the details on that right now, but you could help her with her serve so easily. And she's very, very solid mentally. I mean, she's close to baseline, short, compact. One thing about players, when talking about tennis in general, but on the women's side, I think short memories is one of the reasons people don't go to the net. I definitely get people's attention. I go, people have already forgot Ash Barty. It wasn't too long ago that she was playing, and she had some tools. Who's playing today that's similar? Jabeur. I mean, I would like to see her win as well. I think the movement, the fitness, not sure where she is, but she definitely, and I don't like the term old school, new school. There is no school, but she can definitely have variety and play different patterns, different combinations. Where for the most part, it's see ball, hit ball. And I will bang this ball big. It's not like people. There so too many times. It's like I'm going for the $100 shot from the 10-cent position. I mean, the players do an excellent job, men and women, playing the ground strokes basically through the center. We say the football term, stay in the pocket. But, people just really aren't looking for the short ball. Lost arts, that's come up on our podcast before. Who plays conventional volleys? Who takes a second serve and comes in? Very, very seldom. I saw Shelton do that a few times, but Jack Kramer would say that young man needs to go back to the drawing board and refine his skills. He's so gifted with that left-handed serve, athletic. I mean, charisma. People love the guy. But it's just like we talked about Henry Squire some last week or 2 weeks ago. Somebody who's been in our circle for a long time, and he went 6-6 with Tsitsipas. I go, oh, that could be a bad thing, because is somebody going to sit down and go, let's go through the tape? You're playing on grass. You're 6'5". This is how you serve. Are you coming forward? But what are your thoughts on short memories, Ash Barty? Do you think that people are thinking about how she played anymore, or she's just people have no memory for her, no recollection of her game style?
No, for sure. I mean, and plus she was, a little bit like Sampras, that she really didn't seek the spotlight. So it's, but what a beautiful game. I mean, she couldn't have been taller than 5'5" and had a great serve. It's a beautiful all-court game. I mean, if anything, it was her backhand that was a little bit, I'm not going to say her weakest shot, but I mean, it was, but everything else about her game, her volleys, her slice backhand, serve, forehand, I mean, they were just sensational. And she had such a beautiful game. Yeah, and I'm waiting for someone to say that her style won't work in today's game anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's just going to say that the current is the only. The sports are constantly improving, and so I just have a problem buying it. I mean, it's just not good. Not going to do it.
My local Southern California tournament, Indian Wells. So fortunate to have a Masters 1000 next to where I grew up. I remember going there year after year, and then one year I saw Ash Barty play. So who's this? Like, she was just coming back, 30, 40, maybe in the world, maybe even 50. And I'm walking with my dad, and I say, hey, look. And first time I'm seeing her play. She's on one of the smaller courts, and Indian Wells is a great venue. It's amazing, and you can just see her, slicing, coming in. Great underspin approach shots, finishing at the net, serving, volleying, like all court. She's like all over the court. And I turned to my dad. We watched like we're just looking at her play. And I just turned to my dad, and I said, she's going to be world number one. Just out of nowhere, like you can just tell, like that's the level of play she was playing at compared to her opponent at that time. And a few years later, she managed to do that. So it's amazing to see how, when players do come about that do play in a certain way where they're all court players. I wouldn't consider, I'd say, Alcaraz an all court player. He's more of a baseliner, but he does look for opportunities a lot more than other players to come to the net and finish the point off.
And good old Aussie too with Ash Barty. I mean, she could play doubles. She was a teenage sensation playing doubles, and I think also the distribution of money. That's what another. Talk about going to the net. I think you have to come back to grips. So, certainly brain memory. If you're not programmed to come in, you're not programmed to come in. But just the way people hang on to the racket. I'm always picking on the men on the Pro Tour in the U.S. They're just talking about fantasy football. They don't know grips. You're warming up with someone, and the grip determines the angle of the racket face. And, why do people finesse the volley? I mean, I was one time the late Tommy Fire at this function, and the young Sam Querrey, age 15. I remember Ashley Weinhold, who her parents were with us for 5 years. She became number one junior, so she was on the court as well. Hit the ball well. I mean, she didn't force. She had a beautiful underspin backhand, but no, she was athletic too. But she I think she got as high as 150. She was a really good player in that sense, number one junior in America. But Sam Querrey was going to finesse just like a center. Center's getting better, but are they going to really stick the volley? Depends on how they hang onto the racket. Look at Kyrgios. I mean, somebody asked him on a podcast. He said he's working on his game, and the woman interviewing him said, "Are you going to come back as a certain volleyer?" He was a little bit tongue-tied because, Kyrgios is fun to watch and that amazing serve is, but he didn't follow that up. He didn't back that up with a Sampras type volley.
But I was just talking to Yvonne and trying to get back to the topic of today's podcast is like, why don't guys come forward? I mean, and if you just basically think about it, and just look at the overall framework of players' games, like who really has it in their game style to do it? I mean, obviously Novak is going to go out there and serve a volley. Novak is going to have an underspin backhand and coming in. He's got an influence from Becker and Ivanisevic. Obviously, Alcaraz can do it. Yvonne mentioned Dan Evans, and you mentioned Ben Shelton and maybe his dad trying to influence him to play a little bit more the way he used to. But there's just not a lot of guys that naturally have the ability to do it. I mean, I think Brad Stein has done an incredible job with Tommy Paul. I mean, I see Tommy Paul coming in more than almost anybody.
Well, and one thing with Tommy Paul, coming back to Roddick, I don't know who's number one, but he said that he considered right now Tommy Paul the second best transitional player in tennis. Well, let's guess who would be one. Alcaraz? I mean, who would be number one? Djokovic? Who's coming in? Nadal does come in. He hasn't been really in the public eye that much as of late. He definitely closes in. He's got a lot of downplay with the grip he has on the backhand side. McEnroe for years said, hey, Nadal is the best volleyer in tennis. Not necessarily from a technical standpoint, but when you set the point up, it's like Borg. People think, he never came in. He came in a ton. And he didn't have the best volleys, but he'd get people so far out of court. But Tommy Paul, he just started watching old film. I mean, if you watched him through the juniors, and he didn't go to college, but he watched his, just up till recently, he didn't come in. He says he's watching film at night. He's watching film with people like Patrick Rafter. And
it's an amazing story. I mean, when you hear that, Jack Draper being coached by Wayne Pereira, it also makes you wonder if now that these young pros are getting exposure to some of these former players that have more knowledge, have more experience dealing with that type of style, will it be influenced a little bit more? I mean, it'll be very interesting to find out. But Jack Draper really took it to Alcaraz when he beat him last week.
Mm. Yeah, I listened to an interview with Wayne Ferreira. He asked Jack Draper, when he was no longer coaching Francis Tiafoe. He just picked him out and said, hey, this guy's got upside potential. I guess he was 30 in the world at that time, but the third base coach. But no, I do think that Wayne Ferrer did a great job with coaching, just getting Francis to be more professional. It's like, okay, don't use your cell phone between 9 and 5. Let's get to work. I mean, I do think of the grips. You go back to Jack Kramer saying, "Hey, if I lose to someone with a continental grip, I'm gonna go back to the hotel room and break the furniture." That he just knew under pressure. So that's why he could build a tennis club and buy a golf course. He knew under pressure that Gonzalez was going to go cross court on the forehand volley. Rod Laver. That's where I think you have to dig and say, okay, well, let's go through tennis history. Arthur Ashe, humble guy, said, excuse me, he's humble as well. He was so humble as well. But Rod Laver said, poor Artie can't hit a forehand volley. He beat him 21 times in a row. And but why couldn't he hit a forehand volley? People have the savvy to pick up on that weakness. A lot of times, the players, they don't have very good passing shots. Why they don't have very good passing shots is they've grown up not hitting passing shots. So it should be at least an element of surprise. I mean, just to mix it up, it's just to throw the returner off. If you're certain staying back every time, the returner can say, okay, I'm just going to elevate the ball, lift, hit the ball deep. But if you're coming in, that word you used in the beginning, contrast, if you're coming in some of the time, you're mixing it up, then you got to mix up the returns. But I think bad math, the math, one, no reps equals no myelin. And then, the speed, smoothness of movement from encoding the neural pathways. I think bad math, bad grips, how you're hanging onto the racket. I mean, if you're playing match after match and you have like almost zero net attempts, then creative practice. But I think solutions. Let's talk about solutions so we could wrap it up.
Oh, I got.
I think once. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention one thing about a drill we do. Rat-a-tat-tat, Vic Braden's favorite drill, where you start at the baseline, two players, they hit a high feed down the middle, and then they volley to each other and close the net. And if you just give players new to the drill just those instructions alone, it's like there's a moat in front of the net, and they just don't cross it. And it's usually that moat's halfway between the service line and the net, around where we say good volley position starts, 10.5 feet. Now at GVP, at good volley position, you have only 30 degrees of potential volleying angle. So it's not, you only gain 10 degrees from the baseline. So you go all the way from the baseline to the service line, and then halfway up, you only gain 10 degrees. And players that do the drill, they just stop there. They're just like petrified of getting any closer to the net. It happened a few days ago, and I stopped the players and I said, "Hey, like, what you guys aren't getting? Like, why aren't you guys getting any closer?" And they looked at me, they all confused, like, "Just get closer. I mean, what the worst is going to happen? The ball's just going to hit you." And I asked one of the players, "Hey, turn around." And I just threw the ball at him. That's all it's going to happen. It's not going to be bad. And so they ended up closing more and more. It really, the magic starts for me, and I feel like for other players, if they truly understand stats and the dimensions of the court, physical laws and such, that 3 feet from the net, you get 130 degrees of potential volleying angle, potential hitting angle. But you got to get there. And and if you have players that in a drill situation where we ask them not to hit hard, are just instinctually don't even get close to being there, it's going to be very difficult for them in a point play situation to even get there. So drills like that, I think, would help in letting them understand, like, hey, stand 3 feet away from the net. Look at this sight. We say, what a beautiful sight, you can hit left and right almost. And it's very rare that people, we analyze matches, point play here. And very, very, very rare that we ever see someone finish with a volley that close to the net. Yeah, so drills like that really, really quite are eye-opening, I would say.
When you watch kids warm up, say it's a right-handed player, they're going to be on the left side of the court, because in the warm up they slide over, just hit forehand volleys. And that drill that Braden says, number one drill, favorite drill, rat-a-tat-tat, you just go right at each other. You're trying to hit the other person in the chest. Vic would never say aim at their feet because he go, no, gravity's going to take the ball down. Just go right at chest level. And people are not only reluctant to go to the net, they're running around their backhand volley. They're trying to hit a forehand volley, and the arm gets jammed against the body. With, I think creative training. I mentioned that. I think also situational training. Why not just go out and, Braden used to say, hey, why don't you play doubles and poach on every ball? Play a set, just poach every ball. Play a set, just serve and volley every ball. Play one bounce singles. Okay, you play one bounce singles, no winners. So a person serves, comes in, person returns, comes in, and their partners are just, the ball can't bounce a second time. And it's just like playing catch with a baseball. It's like you hit it to me, I'll hit it to you. But it's amazing. It's amazing how, again, I mentioned this with ice hockey. Everybody can skate now. When I was a kid, videotape first came in, and then figure skaters helping hockey players learn how to skate, power skating. Now every hockey player can fly. Obviously, some were just like a Connor McDavid. Actually, I studied ice skating in Toronto. Yari Boriski was his coach. And when I see Connor McDavid skate, I see Yari Boriski's demos. And, certainly I think he's touched by the good Lord, but this guy can just absolutely fly. In pro tennis, you get in trouble, but it's like we have players that are not complete. They can't play doubles. To us, we tell juniors all the time, you're going to be a nightmare for a college coach if you can't play doubles. It starts now. And there's just not the emphasis in the early years. But, you said it's the cycle. Will the cycle return of players coming back in? And I think it would. Rybakina, she's so good, but she could be, in comparison to Swiatek or Goff, a few others, she could be a better mover. But, it's okay. If we're just going to have a column, okay, who's the best tennis player, who's the best athlete, and who's combined the best? And her ball striking overall, her mechanics are very, very good. I mean, she already has a Wimbledon title, but she could certainly have more net appearances. But I think another thing, too, is that on the tour, players aren't really looking at stats. They're not really looking at stats.
Yeah.
Why don't you wrap it up, Yvonne?
Well, one thing to mention is mention Rybakina. She has the one major title at Wimbledon, but one player we didn't mention when we were talking about who might win on the women's side was last year's winner, Vondrousova. It's very interesting how it's quite amazing how she's down the list of people who might win. And I don't know much about her. I just know that she did win last year, and she had some all right results since then, not the best. So I guess that's why she's so low in the standings in the odds to win it again. But if a player's competitive enough to be able to play and win Wimbledon, I think that can drive her to do well. She has so many points to defend, and a lot of players that have tons of points to defend are playing in their home country, which she's not. But just as an example, they tend to do a lot better. I heard Roddick in his podcast a clip a while ago say that he always played better, and of course it's flipped for many people. But and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard him say that he feels like he plays better in his home crowd. So yeah, Vondrousova still
Lefty.
Lefty.
You got to throw some votes to the lefties too.
You know what? I'm going to go off and I'm going to mention two solutions. Number one, I would like Brett Haber and Ted Robinson to never speak during tennis matches and allow, the guys that actually played to give the analysis. I mean, I like listening to Courier. I like listening to most of the ex-players. They usually have a decent understanding of situation and what's happening and what players are thinking. It happens every single time where someone serves and volleys and loses a point, and they bemoan the fact that they served and volleyed. They don't take into account the score. They don't take into account the situation. They don't take into account that they might have had a sitter volley and they missed it. So that's my number one. And my second when you were talking about solutions, you've always talked about green light points, for you love serve and volley. The one shot that Alcaraz hit when he first really made his breakthrough that I love to see was when guys would hit second serves on the deuce side, and he would go there, take the backhand early, and come into the net.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I could be wrong, but I don't remember players doing that since Todd Martin. So that's a long gap to go from Todd Martin. Maybe I'm missing a guy or two, but that would be, with most, especially with most juniors nowadays, they all hit their little kick serves, to the backhand. I mean, that for most of these kids, especially the women that usually have great backhands, that'd be a great initial solution or initial pattern to start doing it. Start doing it, on critical points when the second serve could be even shorter.
If you could, why don't you repeat that one more time or say it in a different manner, it's a different way, so our listeners nail it down. Go ahead.
Which one?
Well, the gap, what Todd Martin was doing. What's the solution?
Yes, I mean, Todd Martin would be great at taking the second serve return on the deuce side and would hit that backhand, and he would go either up the line or right back up the body, and he'd come into the net and volley. And it was a very effective play. So Alcaraz kind of lulls you to sleep where he'd be on the baseline, and he might run around the second serve and hit a forehand. He might loop a backhand return. But then suddenly, he would just decide to hit it and come in. I mean, and you just don't see that anymore. And, I can go really old school. Like you could think about even guys like Patrick McEnroe. I thought he used to do that very well as well. So, I mean, it's a pattern that's there. You may not be able to use it all the time because, maybe players invariably will start going body serves and kind of jamming you. But basically on critical points when you can kind of assume that a second serve is going to be on the shorter end or the player is going to be a little bit tighter, that might be your situation to take it, to make it happen. So versus the status quo or just play it safe. So, what I was saying is that, a lot of women have phenomenal backhands. Most guys nowadays seem to prefer to run around and hit a forehand. So, but it's still, I watch Taylor Fritz. I mean, you're telling me Taylor Fritz can't do that pattern? I mean, he's got a phenomenal two-handed backhand.
Taylor Fritz, I mean, he starts the point so well with the serve and the return. And he's worked so hard. He's so competitive. I just, coming back to TFO, I mean, Tommy Paul, the USTA at one point said the best athlete they've ever tested, tennis player, has been Tommy Paul. With watching this match the other day, Colton Smith and Spencer Johnson. Spencer Johnson was the freshman of the year, Pac-12. Those guys at best are just offensive baseliners. I mean, they're not serving volleys. The word pure serving volley. It wasn't too long ago. And Max Cressy, he spent a little time in our corner. He was labeled the only serving volleyer in all of tennis. So I think about so if he had stayed in the mix with Matt Clure, Andy Fitzgerald, both, how is he volleying? Where is he volleying? And then there's some other questions like when. When? How about sometime go to the net? With more solutions.
I mean, those are the ones that just kind of come to mind, right? If you're talking about your green light points and the second serve return points, Additionally, with all the drop shots that you see the players using, I mean, what would you guess? How often do they follow it up?
You mentioned Yannick. No, he was somebody to watch. He hit a drop shot. It was a drop shot approach shot, and he'd come in behind it and it'd force them to hit up, and he'd be in a volleying position. Oh, not much.
Well, I mean,
not much. They don't follow it in that much as a coming in behind it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, they do it. Some, but just as easily they might stay back and want to pass. or break down a guy's volley. So, again, I just think that a solution could possibly be set a low number and just reach for that number in most of the matches you play. Let's say, start off at 5 or 6, and then I think as more situations come about, it'll become a lot easier to get the players to come forward. I mean, I remember, was it Balotelli with Tommy Haas, where his coaching advice was to come in all the time, and you'll figure out when is the right time and not the right time to come in.
I never heard that. I certainly watched Tommy. I watched Tommy Haas. I think anybody spent time at Balotelli screaming at Red, Coach Red, and since Tommy Haas got older, he fired him every other day. Those guys would just be screaming at each other. I think with again, all the skill level that Tommy Haas had in the ball striking, certainly he's a player. He got to be 2 in the world. That he could have come in more. We have talked about other sports. In football, they practice. There's a 2-minute drill. They practice. I don't think that people really practice. They don't practice. Okay, I'm going to be playing singles, doubles. I'm going to be playing Vic Braden and philosophy. I'm going to be able to hit every shot from every position of the court, singles or doubles, any surface. People don't practice to be a net player. But certainly the 2-minute drill, it's like, okay, we have to throw the ball. There's only 2 minutes left on the clock. I think a high school plays, it's going to be a rehearsal. We're going to go through our lines over and over and over again. A kid we worked with years ago was in a major movie. He just told us, one sentence was like a full day. But it's just not practiced. Practice like you play like you practice. I think also too, the way there's so much recruiting that goes on now, even in junior tennis. People are out there handing out their business cards, and then the idea of always playing up. I mean, there's just so many reasons. If a kid is always playing up, like Jimmy Connor is arguably from the best age group ever in American tennis, 1952. Just named like 10 guys that were right there, top 10 in the world. And it was a different time. There hadn't been that explosion of tennis in Eastern Europe, this and that. But with Connors would say, always play your age group, play where the pressure is. And so many people play up. And, if you play up, you become many times the counter attacker. You're not coming in. Be able to beat somebody 3 different ways. We told a group today, you should be able to beat people staying back, beat people coming in, then a combination of both. It's not rocket science. But if you don't practice that,
My solution, I think would be great is, around tennis circles, tennis clubs, tennis academies, what they could do is host, you can make your own local UTR tournaments and have it rated. So the players have an incentive. And what you do is you have house rules. So this tournament's serve and volley only, doubles and singles. You stay back, roaming umpires are, just based off of, house rules. You got to, if you play in this tournament, you got to serve and volley every single ball, first serve and second serve, and everyone plays by the same rules. And so there's no advantage or disadvantage in that sense. So players kind of get used to the fact, like, okay, this is a different type of game that we're playing, and then they slowly get used to it. And then when they go and play a regular match, now they actually have another option besides just banging ground strokes from the baseline. Now they have, okay, this isn't working. I lost 6-2, 6-3, 6-4, or whatever it is in the first set. Let me try this thing that I've been practicing, in my local club or whatever. I'm a serve and volley. I've been getting pretty good at it. Or hopefully that's the idea, that's the goal, and that thought that I had. And then we have some more dynamic play. There's some more appearances towards the net.
I think UTR is part of the problem.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Because if you're being penalized that you lost 7 games instead of 6 games, that kid's not going to come forward. So he's going to cheat, he's going to push, he's going to do whatever is necessary to win that match, and it is not coming forward. So, I mean, I love Ivan's idea, but I think it can't be tied to UTR because, that's why where I kind of wish the one-on-one format really took off a little bit more, just because that is a brilliant way to sort of do it. But I just really have my doubts if you attach UTR to anything.
One thing with the UTR IOD, Dion Krupe, injury of day, coach that I've known for a long time. That's an IOD, injury of day. And if a kid's about to lose that 7th game, they're going to pull out because their UTR mass going down. Speaking of Tommy Haas, he convinced Eddie Crass. Our listeners should go back to listen to Ed Crass, one-on-one doubles, ghost doubles, diagonal doubles, cross-court doubles. And Tommy said, hey, let him stay back. But Ed went back to his principle that you have to serve volley in his game, one-on-one doubles. I helped through the late Bobby Curtis, Eddie Crass getting his first tournament sanctioned. Now we're looking out at 3, beautiful indoor courts, looking this way beyond the camera and this way, these blinds go up. It's a beautiful clay court setting. And every tennis court, the blended lines, now it should have obviously the pickleball lines. So it's a tennis court with pickleball lines. It should have the 10 and under lines, and it should have a line right down the middle of the court. So the center service line is white, and now the courts here are blue. So the blue blended line, different shade of blue, and people should know how to play one-up, one-back doubles. I think another thing that's so important, though, is, pardon my teenage lingo, but the suck-ups. Is a kid gets to be pretty good, and there's so many people, Vic Braden used to say, the kid doesn't change, but everybody around the kid changes. I remember, and his name comes up all the time because people look at old films. Victor Lillo, if you were with me, where we talked to him during the changeover, the final of the Orange Bowl at 12s, we still have a film of him winning the national 12s and just coming forward. But then a lot of people got in his inner circle and said, no, you can't play that way. That's not the modern game. You got to have the big forehand. So I do think that coming back to the UTR again, it's not just UTR, but UTR tournaments, maybe all tournaments here in the U.S., not so much overseas. But a kid would experiment in the first set. I heard this through our conversation with Chuck Creasy, where he's just so against shortening up the matches. I really think that the first set should be a 10-point tiebreaker. And then from there, so the third set is, people go, no, that doesn't make any sense. But people are laughing at Americans where we're just playing this 10-point tiebreaker. So I know my son Connor, he used to say, it's not really a match. If it's a 10-point tiebreaker with, so you, as a kid going to experiment in the first set, going, I could beat this guy. It might take me 3, but the first set, I'm going to try to do this in tournament play. So there's so many factors. Anything else, guys?
I had a separate comment. On the podcast, we've talked a lot about commentators and not giving them the best rep. One thing I would like to mention is you can just sit down with a pencil and paper, and I think you can tell the quality of a commentator and the quality of the comments that are being shared is if really you can write anything down on that piece of paper, because most of the time, like we've mentioned, is just small talk. It's just, I would say, time filler, stats, for example, not much fact finding information. So if you could sit down with a pencil and paper and just say, okay, what can I get out of this commentary that would help my own game? And it's not much, unfortunately, for majority of the matches. That's one comment I had. A second comment was, Andres, you had mentioned about how many players had that pattern of Alcaraz taking that backhand return in close and coming to the net. Back in 2017, Federer, when he had this comeback, I was a Federer fanatic. I mean, every match that he was on, I just had to be glued to the TV. I mean, he just was so amazing in my eyes. I was like, I got to watch this match. I mean, this guy's amazing. And I remember specifically Indian Wells final, for example, Nadal, he'd be on the ad side taking the wide serve, the same pattern, taking it short, return up the line and coming in. And, he crushed Nadal in that final and a few other matches they played that year. So I think Fed in his post 2017 did play that a bit more than not more than Alcaraz. Alcaraz is for sure is doing that more, but Roger had that going for him.
Yeah, I think one thing, going back to ice hockey, if a kid's afraid to go in the corner after the puck, it's gutless. There's a fumble in football. A kid's not going to jump on it. It's gutless. It's really strong lingo, but I do think there's too much romancing the player. A player becomes pretty good in the 12s. How many people are recruited to academies? The backdoor deal, like, okay, you can come to our academy on a scholarship. That's still being done, and because they get some good players in an academy. So then 4 other people are going to sign up because, that could be say for simple math. If it's a $50,000 academy, they give a scholarship to one kid who draws in 4 others. They're making $200,000 on recruiting that kid. Mm. And, then is anybody willing to take time away from their game? This girl who's here, she has 3 more years to play college tennis. So that's 1,000 days. And so we went through play-by-play on a match she played against Florida State today. And, tomorrow we're going to teach everybody how to chart. And, it's like, okay, this is where it begins. It's like Jack Kramer's father said to him, that was junior tennis. Now this is pro tennis. And when kids come up, there's a big difference between little kid tennis and big kid tennis. In little kid tennis, there's no forcing. And the commentators, you're a fan of Mark Hamlin. The other night he said on a podcast, last podcast, he's talking about German TV. That he uses a pretty strong word. Oh, it's pitiful. He also said that junior coaches on the circuit, I shouldn't say junior coaches, young coaches on the pro circuit, he said you can see it in their face. They're afraid to say anything. Then Luke Jensen has said so well, is that who's the boss? Hey, the boss is the player. Hey, the coach is not the boss. So, there's just so many things. But if we have somebody step up and all of a sudden, they're a very good example, it's like, well, that would make a difference. But then let's go back to Sampras. Sampras, people go back and watch him still. And, we talk about appreciation for players from the past. Could someone have the audacity to say that Sampras couldn't play in today's game? He played that one match. He didn't meet up with Federer in his prime. But come on, if they played each other in the prime, and if the person to ask would be Federer. Sampras was so good volleying, so good. And, then you'll hear someone like Wielander, who I really respect as a player, but, he said, no one will, it was Jim Courier. I believe it was Jim Courier. You're the fact checker. That no one will ever volley again like Sampras. It's like, what a dumb comment, But do you know the angle of the racket face? Do you know the grips? Do you know where the power sources come from? And that's something that's really missing. What we've put together is just homework. And really, in most circles, the way we address tennis with tennis math, it's not even part of the conversation. It's not even part of the conversation. Certainly, you listen to commentating, play by play. Okay, Andres or Ivan, one of you guys, why don't you wrap this up? What would you write on the bathroom wall? You got a list of things you want to rattle off again?
Yeah, I can go through a few notes I got.
You want to do that, Andres, before you got a last word before he goes through his list?
No, I never want to interrupt Ivan when he can go on on a good rant here.
No, not a rant. I got some notes from what we've talked about. I'll go through them. Just a few points that I enjoyed jotting down. From the beginning of the podcast, the point has to be the most important thing. But when it's over, you need to let it go. That's Federer's mindset. Players fear the low volley. Monotonous, waiting for the first player to wilt. I jotted that down. Wooden rackets to bring tennis back into tennis. One thing I actually wrote down here, forgot to mention, is we were mentioning a tall 6'5" player from Utah. That goes back to when I was in an academy. Just visiting because my sister played and trained there at a Newport Beach academy by the name of Advantage Tennis Academy. I don't believe it's under the same name now. Changed ownership, changed clubs with Coach Jimmy Johnson and another coach, co-owner, Andres, that's you, Gomez, Adrian Gomez, and this player, 6'5", big tall lefty. We were all gathered around, and Jimmy Johnson said, "All right, tactics." We started talking about tactics, and this is way before I knew any of the information. I was just didn't know anything, and I was around 21, just joining the group, and this player raised his hands, and Jimmy says, "Yes, who what do you do? What are your tactics in the game?" And the best answer, big serve, bigger forehand. And everybody started laughing, and we were all shaking our heads, because he knew, we all knew that was not the best answer, but he just was honest, which was great about it.
That same player, the reason he ended up Jimmy Johnson is former student, longtime friend. My Kool-Aid is stronger than Jimmy Johnson's. That's why that player ended up in California. Go ahead.
Yeah. So continuing, backhand for McEnroe was like a wave off the ocean. So I mentioned about the moat that players tend to have instinctually around the net. They just don't seem to want to cross this line, this 10.5 feet. They just don't want to cross it. We mentioned Tommy Paul, how he's looking at old films and just attacking the net more and more, which is great. And then I mentioned commentators. See how much you can write down on a piece of paper that would help your game out when you're listening to commentators, and don't be in awe, I would say.
Prophets of the obvious. Okay, go ahead.
That's all I got. Those are the last few points that I jotted down for today's talk.
Elbow in, racket face up. So many players, Freud's return to the wound concept. Getting tongue-tied. Freud's return to the womb concept. That's a Bradenism. When people get tight, they draw in. They get scared. They draw in. That elbow comes in. And people are afraid to volley. Fearless. You need to be fearless. And when you miss, know why you missed. I have to ask you, who do you rank higher on these silly podcasts we have, Andres? Yvonne or Mark Hamlin?
Hamlin is my hero. If there's one thing I want to do, I'm going to go to Germany and meet the guy.
So Hamlin says,
I tell everyone the joke about about my dog getting hit, and I don't want to get censored by Andy, but
Andy Facel, our censor, yeah. A clean
the thing
podcast.
Is,
Can't swear.
I'd never met Mark, but I remember. When you lived in Tampa, I believe.
Yeah.
He came down and worked with Connor on the serve, and you guys posted a video. And I love the layout that he did on that video. And then I never knew his personality until that first podcast, and I just found the guy to be hilarious. It was my favorite podcast when you and old friends get together and you laugh like a little kid. Those are my favorite episodes.
One thing about Hamlin, he said on the podcast, it's true. I know Andy Fitzgerald is always talking about 70 miles per hour. Like Braden, you can drive the volley when it's above the level net. Gravity will bring it down. And Hamlin was talking about that, and he goes, "Yeah, you change your racket face by 2 degrees, you hit the back fence, but you need to get that elbow out. You need to get the racket head." And Vic, who's not, you can volley with a continental grip. You just got to square the racket head out. But a volley is a drive. Volley's a drive, and it's amazing to me that tennis players can't play from the service line in. So it's like, come on, be creative and let's do drills from the service line in. But anyway, Andres,
I'm hoping for a Tommy Paul Alcaraz quarter. I believe that they're slated to meet.
That'd be great.
That might be a slow hope for American tennis. That might motivate a few kids to watch and play more.
Well, I think Paul Horning said this. Green Bay Packers, number 5, back in the days of Vince Lombardi. or maybe it was Max McGee saying it about Paul Horning, who was breaking curfew and drinking a little bit of whiskey. Talking about a football player, I'd rather have a whiskey drinker than a milk drinker. Back in the day, Tommy would party a little bit. I guess he's really cleaned it up and he's much more professional now. But I do think the effort gene, hey, I'm just going. He's very athletic, but he, like McEnroe was a junior. He was a baseliner. It's like, okay, I'm going to go forward. And Tommy Paul it's great. You're talking about how Brad Stein's helped him. And, I guess Fritz went back up to number one, but they've been back and forth. Who's the number one American? He's 12 in the world. But with Federer not in the mix, Nadal not in the mix, Djokovic coming back from knee surgery, you do have everybody talking about Sinner and Alcaraz, but wouldn't it be great for American tennis? I get so tired of hearing that no one has won since Andy Roddick. No one's won an American title since Andy Roddick. And again, Roddick is great for tennis. But when they're playing doubles, Andy, it's good to have a healthy ego, but he wasn't going to be asked to play doubles. But I did some things at their academy. Never coached Andy Roddick for 1 second, but I have some stories going back to when he was 7 years old watching him play. Actually, it was Craig Tiley. Craig Tiley was working with us, a student assistant, and then an assistant on and on, 7 years. And he takes a group of kids to the Texas sectionals, Wichita Falls, hotter than hot. Andy Roddick's 7 years old. He never stops hitting the backboard except for when the kids would come in to report the score, he would just stop. 7 years old, he'd be talking to 18-year-olds. Who won? What was the score? And he just would turn around and hit more balls. So there's so many great things about Roddick and the whole family. I think that Andy Roddick would have put his head down and run right through a brick wall if he knew that someone talking to him that really knew the volley, really knew how to teach him how to volley. Out of self-discovery, he had a palm-up serve. And we have a film of that. And he, the South African.
Stanford?
Yeah, Stanford, Boston. It was that Andy wasn't taught how to serve. Out of frustration, he put the racket in the salute position. Speed of the backswing has nothing to do with the power supply. And, he has his own gyrations, but at that hit, boy, he generates that ball, tosses way out in front, way to the right, and everything's going right max at a 45-degree angle. He has that power line. He's juicing the ball. But that was through self-discovery. Amazing. Number one America for like a decade. No one said, well, Andy, this is what you're doing in the backswing with your serve. It was a fluke. And it's just amazing. So, tennis research and tennis practice are so greatly removed. And certainly in our corner of the world, we're not scientists, we're not artists, but I'd say that we have studied our craft. And you need to have a combination of knowing science and knowing art. But going to the net has become a lost art. That's my last comment. Andres Barbosa, the fact checker.
All right, guys. Another great evening.
I hope we helped somebody out. Thanks, Andres. Thanks, Yvonne. Listeners.
Thanks guys.
I hope there was how do we go? How do we say it? The tennis treasure chest. I hope there was a
nuggets,
golden nugget, and not any senior moments. Adios, amigos. Good night, Andres. Good night, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.